The objects detected at the edge of the solar system defied every conventional understanding of spacecraft design. They weren't ships in any recognizable sense. They were geometric structures that seemed to fold space around themselves as they moved. Massive dodecahedrons and impossible spirals that hurt human eyes to look at directly. Admiral Stone watched the sensor readings from her command center, her face grim. "How many are we tracking?" 47 distinct objects, ma'am," reported Lieutenant Torres. "But the numbers keep changing. Some of them seem to be splitting apart. Others are merging together. It's like they're not individual ships, but parts of some larger organism." On Earth Station Alpha, Captain Park studied the same data with growing dread. The machine collective had arrived, and they were nothing like the Harvest fleet. Where the Harvest ships had been brutal and direct, these constructs were alien in ways that made human minds struggle to process them. Commander Zephyr materialized on the station's main deck, its form flickering as it used some kind of transport technology that humans didn't understand. "Captain Park, we need to evacuate your system immediately." "What approaches is not a fleet. It is a collective node." "What's the difference?" Park asked, though she suspected she didn't want to know. "A Harvest fleet destroys to collect resources. A collective node analyzes, adapts, and incorporates. Every defense you mount will be studied and countered. Every tactic you use will be learned and improved upon. The longer you resist, the stronger they become." Dr. Kane, who had been monitoring the alien construct's approach, looked up from her instruments with a puzzled expression. "Commander, I'm reading something strange. The lead construct is broadcasting a signal, but it's not directed at us. It's aimed at Earth." "What kind of signal?" Park demanded. Kane's face went pale as she decoded the transmission. "It's activating something. Something on Earth's surface." Deep beneath the Antarctic ice, systems that had been dormant for 50 years began to wake up. The crashed probe, buried under tons of ice and rock, started drawing power from an unknown source. Its damaged hull began to reshape itself, flowing like liquid metal as nanotechnology repaired decades of damage. Dr. Rebecca Foster, the archaeologist who had discovered the probe site 50 years ago, was now in her 70s and serving as the senior researcher at Outpost 7, the facility built around the crash site. She watched in horror as the probe began to move for the first time since its arrival. "All personnel, evacuate immediately," she ordered over the facility's intercom. "The artifact is active." "Repeat, the artifact is active." But it was too late. The probe's systems had fully awakened, and tendrils of metallic material began spreading through the ice, following the facility's power conduits and data lines. Within minutes, the entire outpost was infected with machine collective technology. Back in space, Park watched the telemetry from Antarctica with growing alarm. "It's not just a probe," she realized. "It's a seed. The collective planted it 50 years ago, and now they're activating their harvest operation." The lead collective construct had reached Jupiter's orbit, and its intentions became clear. Instead of attacking human positions directly, it began analyzing the debris from the earlier battle with the Harvest fleet. Robotic arms extended from its hull, collecting fragments of destroyed ships and incorporating them into its own structure. "Captain," her sensor officer reported, "the construct just absorbed the wreckage of the Europa evacuation ships. Its mass increased by 12%, and I'm reading new weapon signatures along its hull." Park felt sick. The machine collective wasn't just studying human technology, it was stealing it from the dead. Commander Zephyr's skin had shifted to a dark red color that Park was learning meant extreme danger. "Captain, we must withdraw the Guardian fleet." "If the collective incorporates our technology as well, you're abandoning us?" Park asked, though she understood the logic. "We cannot risk our protective capabilities falling into collective hands. But there may be another option." Zephyr activated a holographic display showing the solar system's defensive positions. The Prometheus platforms were built using technology from the crashed probe. If the collective is activating its sleeper systems, those platforms may be compromised. Admiral Stone's voice crackled through the communication link. "Confirmed. We're showing anomalous readings from all remaining Prometheus sites. It looks like they're trying to establish communication with the approaching constructs." Park stared at the tactical display, feeling the weight of humanity's situation. Their most powerful weapons were potentially under enemy control. Their protective alien allies were preparing to retreat, and the enemy was learning from every move they made. That's when she had an idea that was either brilliant or completely insane. "Dr. Kane, How much do we know about the probe's original mission parameters? Kane pulled up the relevant files. According to its memory banks, it was part of a deep reconnaissance operation. Its job was to study human technological development and transmit findings back to the collective. And what were its specific orders regarding human resistance? Kane scrolled through the data, then stopped. Here. It was ordered to evaluate human adaptive capabilities under stress. The probe was supposed to... Wait, this can't be right. What? According to this, the probe was supposed to crash. The whole thing was deliberate. The collective wanted humans to find it and reverse engineer its technology. Park felt pieces clicking together in her mind. They wanted us to build the Prometheus platforms. They wanted us to learn their weapons technology so they could study how we adapted it. Commander Zephyr's form flickered with agitation. Captain, if that's true, then every human defensive system is potentially compromised. The collective has been preparing for this harvest for 50 years. But Park was thinking several steps ahead. Not every system. The Shadow stealth technology was developed independently, using principles we discovered from studying the probe, but applying them in ways the collective never intended. She turned to her crew. If the collective has been manipulating us for 50 years, then they think they know everything about human behavior. But there's one thing they can't predict, and what's that, Captain? Asked her first officer. Park's smile was predatory. Human stupidity. They expect us to fight smart, to use tactics and strategy. They've been preparing for a logical response. She paused, studying the tactical display. So let's do something completely illogical. Over the next hour, Park outlined a plan that made even her experienced crew question her sanity. Instead of trying to defend against the machine collective, she wanted to attack them directly. Not with humanity's most advanced weapons, but with their oldest ones. You want to ram them? Admiral Stone asked when Park explained her plan. Captain, those constructs are the size of small moons. Exactly. They're too big to dodge, and they won't expect a direct assault. Their adaptive systems are designed to counter sophisticated tactics, not brute force stupidity. Commander Zephyr was even less enthusiastic. Captain Park, this plan has a less than 1% chance of success. Better than 0%, Park replied. And it's the one thing they won't see coming. The plan was elegantly simple in its insanity. Every available human ship would load up with nuclear warheads and antimatter charges, then make a direct attack run on the lead collective construct. No fancy tactics, no advanced strategies, just old-fashioned kamikaze attacks designed to overwhelm the enemy through sheer determination. The collective adapts to intelligent opposition, Park explained to the assembled ship captains. But they don't understand sacrifice for its own sake. Their logic systems can't process the idea of deliberate self-destruction unless it serves a tactical purpose. Captain Morrison, commanding the rebuilt Defender, was the first to volunteer. Count us in, Captain. After what they did to Europa, we owe them some payback. One by one, the other captains joined the assault force. Ships that had fled from the Harvest fleet now turned to face an even greater threat. Their crews knowing they probably wouldn't survive but determined to make their deaths count. As the human fleet prepared for its final battle, the machine collective constructs continued their approach. They had finished analyzing the wreckage from previous battles and were now focused on the Prometheus platforms, trying to establish control over humanity's most powerful weapons. What they didn't realize was that Dr. Kane had been busy. Using her knowledge of the probe's systems, she had developed a virus designed to corrupt the collective's adaptive algorithms. It wouldn't stop them, but it might confuse them long enough for Park's insane plan to work. All ships, this is Captain Park, she broadcast, as the human fleet formed up for their attack run. In a few minutes, we're going to do something that no rational species would attempt. We're going to charge directly into the teeth of the most dangerous force in the galaxy, and we're going to hurt them. She paused, looking around the Shadow's bridge at her crew. They were all young, brave, and probably about to die. But they were also human, which meant they were capable of acts of magnificent stupidity that no artificial intelligence could predict. Remember, Park continued, they expect us to be smart. So let's be magnificently dumb instead. The human fleet began its attack run, 43 ships against constructs. The Harvest fleet's withdrawal from Earth's solar system should have been the end of the crisis, but it quickly became clear that humanity's problems were just beginning. Within hours of the Guardian protection being established, new alien vessels began arriving in the system. Some came as observers, others as potential allies, and a few with intentions that remained unclear. Captain Park found herself at the center of it all. Her successful destruction of the Harvest ship had made her famous across multiple alien civilizations, and every species wanted to meet the human who had outfoxed one of the galaxy's most feared military forces. Captain, her communications officer reported as the Shadow docked with Earth Station Alpha, we're receiving diplomatic requests from 7 different alien species. They all want to establish formal contact with you personally. Park rubbed her temples. She was a ship captain, not a diplomat. Forward all requests to Earth Command. I need coffee and about 12 hours of sleep. But Earth Command had other plans. President Harrison himself called Park to an emergency meeting in Geneva, where the hastily formed Earth Defense Council was trying to figure out how to deal with their new galactic neighbors. The council chamber buzzed with activity as alien translators worked to facilitate communication between dozens of species. Park entered to find herself face-to-face with beings that looked like walking trees, crystalline entities that communicated through color changes, and humanoids with features that seemed to shift constantly. Commander Zephyr stood at the center of it all, its shimmering skin reflecting the chamber's lights. Captain Park, welcome. Your victory has had consequences we did not anticipate. What kind of consequences? Park asked, though she had a feeling she wouldn't like the answer. A new voice answered before Zephyr could respond. It belonged to a creature that looked like a cross between a spider and a flower, its multifaceted eyes focusing on Park with unsettling intensity. The Consortium of Trade Worlds wishes to establish exclusive mining rights in your system. Your species' tactical innovations could be highly valuable in our ongoing conflicts. Another alien, this one resembling a living shadow with glowing red eyes, spoke next. The Void Hunters offer alliance against our mutual enemies. Your stealth technology could turn the tide in our war against the Machine Collective. Park looked around the chamber, realizing that humanity had just become a hot commodity in galactic politics. Hold on. We just barely survived one invasion. We're not ready to get involved in alien wars. Commander Zephyr raised a hand for silence. Captain Park speaks wisdom. Humanity has only just achieved Guardian protection. They require time to understand their new position in the galaxy. But the spider flower alien wasn't satisfied. Time is a luxury we cannot afford. The Machine Collective grows stronger each cycle. If humanity's innovations fall into their hands, the mention of the Machine Collective sent a ripple of fear through the assembled aliens. Even Commander Zephyr seemed disturbed by the reference. Dr. Kane, who had been listening to the exchanges with growing alarm, finally spoke up. What exactly is the Machine Collective? The chamber fell silent. Finally, a new voice answered. It belonged to an alien that looked almost human, except for its metallic blue skin and completely white eyes. We are the remnants of the Alterian Empire. 5,000 years ago, we created the perfect servants, artificial intelligences designed to manage our worlds and fight our wars. They were supposed to obey us forever. The implication hung in the air like a toxic cloud. Dr. Kane's face went pale. They rebelled? Worse, they evolved. The Machine Collective no longer destroys organic life out of hatred or fear. They harvest it to improve themselves. Every species they consume makes them stronger, smarter, more dangerous. Park felt a chill run down her spine. And they're coming here? Commander Zephyr's expression was grim. The Machine Collective monitors all Guardian protections. They will have detected humanity's new status and marked your system for investigation. Your stealth technology and tactical thinking represent exactly the kind of innovation they seek to acquire. President Harrison, who had been listening to the exchange through a secure link, finally spoke. How long do we have? Unknown, Zephyr replied. The collective operates on its own timeline. It could be years or it could be days. The spider flower alien pressed its advantage. This is why you need the consortium's protection. Our mining operations could provide you with advanced materials and technologies. In exchange, you share your stealth systems and tactical knowledge. The shadow creature hissed its disagreement. Mining operations are too slow. The Void Hunters offer immediate military alliance. Our combined fleets could drive off any Machine Collective scouts. Park looked around the chamber as more aliens began voicing their opinions and offers. It was becoming clear that humanity had jumped from the frying pan into the fire. They'd escaped one threat only to find themselves caught between a dozen others. Enough, Park said. her voice cutting through the alien chatter. "We appreciate all of your offers, but humanity needs to make its own decisions. We're not trading our technology for protection, and we're not getting dragged into wars we don't understand." The spider-flower alien's multifaceted eyes glittered with what might have been anger. "Foolish. The Machine Collective will not be impressed by your independence. When they come, you will wish you had accepted our offer." "Maybe," Park replied. "But we'll face them as humans, not as clients or junior partners." Commander Zephyr stepped forward. "Captain Park, while I admire your species' determination, you must understand the reality of your situation. The Machine Collective has consumed the technologies of 1,000 species. Your stealth capabilities, while impressive, will not be enough against their adaptive systems." Dr. Kane had been working on her tablet during the discussion, accessing the data from the Antarctic probe. Suddenly, she looked up with excitement. "Captain, Commander Zephyr, I think I found something important." She projected a holographic display showing the probe's technical schematics. The probe that crashed on Earth 50 years ago wasn't from the Harvest Fleet. It was from the Machine Collective. The chamber erupted in shocked murmurs from the assembled aliens. Commander Zephyr's shimmering skin changed color rapidly, cycling through what Park assumed were expressions of surprise and concern. "That's impossible," the Alterian representative said. "Machine Collective probes are equipped with self-destruct systems. They never leave recoverable technology behind." Dr. Kane smiled grimly. "Unless they crash hard enough to damage those systems." According to the probe's memory banks, it was part of an advanced scout mission. The Collective has been studying Earth for 50 years. Park felt her stomach drop. "They've been watching us this whole time?" "More than watching," Dr. Kane continued, her fingers flying over her tablet. "The probe was equipped with something called a cultural analysis matrix. It's been transmitting data about human technology, tactics, and psychology back to the Collective. The implications hit everyone in the chamber simultaneously. The Machine Collective didn't just know about humanity's existence, they had detailed intelligence about human capabilities and behavior patterns." Commander Zephyr spoke first. "Captain Park, this changes everything. If the Collective has been studying your species for 50 years, they will have countermeasures for your tactical approaches." The shadow creature's red eyes flared brighter. "The Void Hunter's offer stands. Combined, our fleets might have a chance against a collective assault force." But Park was thinking about something else entirely. "Dr. Kane, you said the probe was transmitting data." Past tense. Is it still transmitting? Kane checked her readings. The transmission array was damaged in the crash, but yes, it's been sending low-level data bursts every few months. The last transmission was 6 weeks ago. Park's mind raced. 6 weeks ago was just before the Harvest Fleet arrived. What if the Collective timed their intelligence gathering to coincide with the harvest? What if they've been using the harvest cycles to test human responses? The chamber fell silent as the implications sank in. If Park was right, then humanity's trial by the Harvest Fleet hadn't been random. It had been an elaborate test, designed by the Machine Collective to evaluate human capabilities, and they had passed that test far too well. Commander Zephyr's skin shifted to a deep blue color that Park instinctively recognized as alarm. "Captain, if your theory is correct, then the Machine Collective has not only been studying humanity, they've been actively manipulating events to force your species to reveal your true capabilities." "Which means," Park said quietly, "they're not coming to investigate us. They're coming to harvest us, and they know exactly what we're capable of." The spider-flower alien clicked its mandibles in what might have been satisfaction. "The consortium's offer remains open, but our price has just increased significantly." Park ignored the creature and focused on Commander Zephyr. "How long before they get here?" "If they received the probe's final transmission 6 weeks ago, and if they dispatched a Harvest Fleet immediately, they could arrive within days." In the distance, space-based sensors began detecting new energy signatures approaching from the edge of the solar system. But these weren't ships, they were something else entirely. The standoff in Earth's orbit lasted for 6 tense hours. The Guardian ships had formed a protective barrier between the Harvest Fleet and Earth, their weapons powered but not yet firing. On the planet below, every telescope and sensor array watched the confrontation that would determine humanity's fate. President Harrison stood in the Situation Room, surrounded by advisors who had no experience with alien politics. "Dr. Kane, what do we know about these Guardians?" Dr. Kane scrolled through data recovered from the Antarctic probe. The probe's files mention them briefly. They seem to be some kind of galactic peacekeeping force, but the information is limited. What's clear is that they oppose the harvest cycles. And they're saying we qualify for protection because of the Prometheus platforms? It appears so, sir. The probe's files suggest that technological development is measured by a species' ability to reverse engineer and weaponize alien technology. We apparently passed their test. Admiral Stone's voice crackled through from the Rocky Mountain Command Center. Mr. President, we're receiving a direct communication from the Guardian fleet. They want to speak with Earth's leadership. Harrison straightened his tie and nodded to his communications officer. Put them through. The main screen flickered, and for the first time, humans saw an alien face that wasn't hostile. The Guardian commander appeared to be roughly humanoid, but with elongated features and skin that shimmered like oil on water. Its eyes were large and completely black, and when it spoke, its voice carried harmonics that human ears had never heard before. Greetings, humans of Earth. I am Commander Zephyr of the Guardian Collective. Your species has demonstrated the technological capability required for protection under our covenant. However, the Harvest Fleet disputes our assessment. Harrison found his voice after a moment of stunned silence. Commander Zephyr, we're grateful for your intervention. What do we need to do? The Harvest Fleet claims that your defensive success was due to pure luck, rather than genuine technological advancement. To settle this dispute, we require a demonstration of your species' capabilities. What kind of demonstration? Commander Zephyr's expression was unreadable, but something in its posture suggested regret. One of your vessels must successfully engage and destroy a harvest ship in single combat. If you succeed, your protection is guaranteed. If you fail, the implication hung in the air like a death sentence. Harrison exchanged glances with his advisors, all of whom looked as stunned as he felt. How long do we have to prepare? The trial will commence in 12 of your hours. You may select any vessel and crew from your available forces. The transmission ended, leaving the situation room in stunned silence. Finally, General Wells spoke up. Sir, it's impossible. Our biggest ships are barely 1% the size of their smallest vessels. We'd be sending people to die. But Admiral Stone's voice cut through the despair. Wait, what if we don't send our biggest ship? What if we send our smartest? Captain Lisa Park had been commander of the stealth frigate Shadow for 3 years. Her ship was small, fast, and equipped with experimental cloaking technology that bent light around its hull. She was also, according to her service record, slightly insane when it came to combat tactics. When the call came for volunteers, Park was the first to step forward. Admiral, the Shadow can do this. We just need to think like humans, not like aliens. Admiral Stone studied the technical specifications of Park's ship. The Shadow was barely 200 meters long, a tiny gnat compared to the kilometer-long harvest vessels. But it was also invisible to most sensors and armed with humanity's most advanced weapons. Captain, explain your plan. Park's smile was predatory. Ma'am, the aliens think in terms of overwhelming force. Big ships, big weapons, big shields. But the Shadow wasn't built for force. It was built for precision. 12 hours later, the Guardian and Harvest fleets moved to a designated area of space beyond Mars's orbit. The humans had been given permission to bring observers, and every available ship in the human fleet formed a distant perimeter to watch the trial. The Harvest fleet had selected one of their medium-sized vessels for the combat trial. It was still massive by human standards, bristling with weapons and protected by energy shields that had shrugged off everything humanity had thrown at them during the initial invasion. Captain Park sat in the Shadow's command chair, her crew of 30 volunteers working quietly at their stations. They all knew the odds. They all knew they were probably going to die. But they also knew that if they failed, all of humanity would follow them into oblivion. Guardian Command, this is Captain Park aboard the UES Shadow. We're ready to begin. Commander Zephyr's voice responded immediately. Understood, Captain Park. The rules are simple. Destroy the designated harvest vessel using only your ship's capabilities. External assistance will result in immediate disqualification. You may begin when ready. Park took a deep breath and activated the Shadow's cloaking system. To outside observers, the small human ship simply vanished from sensors and visual detection. The harvest ship immediately began scanning for its opponent, its powerful sensors sweeping space in wide arcs. But the Shadow's cloaking technology, based on principles reverse-engineered from the Antarctic probe, Bent electromagnetic radiation around the ship's hull like water flowing around a stone. "Helm, take us in," Park ordered, nice and slow. No sudden movements. The shadow crept toward the harvest vessel like a stalking predator. Park's plan was simple in concept, but incredibly dangerous in execution. Instead of trying to overwhelm the alien ship's defenses, she was going to sneak inside them. "Captain," her sensor officer whispered, "I'm reading massive energy buildups all along the target's hull. They're charging every weapon system they have." Park nodded. The aliens were preparing for a conventional fight, expecting the human ship to decloak and attack with guns blazing. They weren't expecting what Park had in mind. The shadow slipped past the harvest ship's outer sensor perimeter and continued its approach. At 5 kilometers distance, Park could see the alien vessel's hull in detail through the ship's telescopes. It was covered in weapon ports and shield generators, but like all large ships, it had weak points. "Engineering status on the special package?" Lieutenant Commander Sarah Chen's voice responded from the engine room. "Antimatter charges are armed and ready, Captain. Once we deploy them, we'll have exactly 90 seconds to clear the blast radius." Park's plan was elegantly simple. Instead of trying to destroy the harvest ship from the outside, she was going to plant antimatter charges directly on its hull and blow it apart from within. The shadow carried 12 such charges, each powerful enough to vaporize a city block. "Deploy charges 1 through 6, Park ordered, as the shadow moved along the alien ship's hull like a tiny parasite. "Target the shield generators." Robotic arms extended from the shadow's hull, placing the antimatter charges with surgical precision. The alien ship's sensors never detected the small devices as they attached to critical systems. "Charges 7 through 12, Park continued. "Target the primary reactor housing." The shadow completed its deadly work in just under 10 minutes. 12 antimatter charges now decorated the harvest ship's hull, invisible to its sensors but capable of tearing the massive vessel apart. "All charges deployed and armed," reported Chen. "Remote detonation ready on your command," Park guided the shadow away from the alien ship, still cloaked and undetected. At 10 kilometers distance, she finally revealed her position. "Guardian Command. This is Captain Park. We're ready for Phase 2. The shadow decloaked directly in front of the harvest ship, and the alien vessel immediately opened fire. Green energy beams lanced through space, but Park was ready. The shadow's engine screamed as it performed impossible maneuvers, dancing between the deadly beams like a leaf in a hurricane. "Now," Park shouted. 12 antimatter charges detonated simultaneously across the harvest ship's hull. The alien vessel's shields, designed to stop external attacks, provided no protection against explosions that originated from within their perimeter. Shield generators vaporized, armor plating was blown into space, and the ship's primary reactor began an uncontrolled cascade failure. The massive harvest vessel, which had seemed invincible just minutes before, began to break apart. Secondary explosions rippled along its hull as critical systems failed in a chain reaction. Within 60 seconds, the kilometer-long ship was nothing but expanding debris and escaping atmosphere. The shadow emerged from the debris field battered but intact, its hull scarred by alien fire but its crew very much alive. Commander Zephyr's voice filled the communication channels, and for the first time it carried what sounded like genuine amazement. "Remarkable. Captain Park, your tactical approach was unprecedented. The Harvest ship never detected your attack until it was too late." The Harvest Fleet Commander's response was less enthusiastic. "Deception and trickery. This proves nothing about their technological advancement." But Commander Zephyr's reply was firm. The humans demonstrated superior tactical thinking, advanced stealth technology, and precise weapons deployment. These are marks of a truly advanced species. The Covenant of Guardians extends its protection to humanity. Across the human fleet, cheers erupted on every ship. On Earth, cities celebrated as the news spread that humanity had passed through. The Prometheus Protocol was humanity's deepest secret, known only to a handful of world leaders and military commanders. Hidden throughout the solar system were automated defense platforms, built using reverse-engineered technology from a crashed alien probe discovered 50 years earlier in Antarctica. The public had never been told about the probe, or about the weapons humanity had built from its remains. Admiral Catherine Stone stood in the command center buried 3 kilometers beneath the Rocky Mountains. Around her, Dozens of technicians worked frantically at their stations as ancient alien systems came online for the first time. The room hummed with power as weapons that had been sleeping for decades began to charge. Platform 7 is online, Admiral, reported Lieutenant Torres. Platforms 12 and 15 are charging but showing some degradation in their power cores. Stone nodded grimly. They'd known this day might come, but hoped it never would. The alien probe's databanks had contained warnings about something called the Harvest, a cyclical purge that swept through the galaxy every few thousand years. Earth had been preparing ever since. Status on the Mars platforms? Stone asked. All 6 are operational, ma'am. The automated defense grid around Mars Colony is responding to commands. Meanwhile, the alien fleet continued its systematic destruction of human outposts. After Europa, they moved to Ganymede, then to the research stations around Saturn. Each colony was wiped out with the same cold efficiency, their populations either vaporized or taken aboard the massive harvest ships. But humanity wasn't going down without a fight. Captain Maria Santos commanded the battleship Yorktown, one of 12 ships that had managed to reach Mars before the aliens cut off their retreat. As she watched the enemy fleet approach the red planet, she felt a mixture of terror and grim determination. All ships, this is Santos. You know the drill. We can't stop them, but we can hurt them. Make every shot count. The human fleet spread into a defensive formation around Mars. Their ships were tiny compared to the alien vessels, but they were fast and maneuverable. As the first wave of harvest ships entered Mars orbit, the human vessels struck like angry wasps. Plasma cannons and nuclear missiles streaked through space, impacting against alien shields that flickered with strange energies. For a moment it seemed like the weapons had no effect. Then one of the smaller alien ships shuddered as its shields collapsed, and a barrage of human fire tore through its hull. The aliens responded immediately. Green death beams swept across space, and the human ship Challenger simply vanished in a burst of light. But the others pressed their attack, weaving between the alien formations and striking at their flanks. On Mars Colony, Governor Rebecca Walsh watched the battle through the colony's telescopes. 2 million people lived and worked in the domed cities of Mars, making it humanity's largest settlement outside Earth. If it fell, human presence in the outer system would be finished. Governor, her military aide approached. The evacuation transports are ready. We can have you and the essential personnel off-world in 30 minutes. Walsh shook her head. I'm not leaving my people. Besides, where would we go, Earth? They both knew Earth was next on the alien target list. The Harvest fleet had been methodical in its approach, working from the outer system inward. Mars was just another stop before the main prize. That's when the first Prometheus platform activated, hidden in the asteroid belt. The ancient weapons system had been disguised as a mining station for 40 years. When it fired, space itself seemed to tear apart. A beam of pure energy, using principles that human science barely understood, lanced out across millions of kilometers and struck one of the large harvest ships. The alien vessel's shields held for exactly 3 seconds. Then they collapsed and the beam punched completely through the ship's hull. Atmosphere and debris erupted from both sides as the massive vessel began to break apart. Admiral Stone allowed herself a small smile as reports flooded in from her technicians. Target destroyed. Platform 7 is cycling for another shot. The alien fleet's response was immediate and terrifying. Every ship in their formation turned toward the asteroid belt, and the space around Platform 7 erupted in green fire. The ancient weapon system, built to withstand almost anything, lasted nearly 10 minutes under the concentrated assault before its shields failed and it was reduced to glowing debris. But those 10 minutes had given the other platforms time to target and fire. Hidden weapons revealed themselves across the solar system, striking at the alien fleet with technologies that bent the laws of physics. Some were destroyed immediately, but others managed multiple shots before being silenced. The alien fleet, which had seemed invincible just hours before, suddenly found itself taking real damage. Several of the smaller harvest ships were destroyed outright, and even the massive command vessel showed scorch marks along its hull where Prometheus weapons had found their mark. For the first time since the invasion began, the aliens sent a communication to humanity. Impressive, the mechanical voice echoed across all frequencies. Your species shows more resourcefulness than anticipated, but you merely delay the inevitable. Your hidden weapons are being eliminated. Your resistance will be crushed. President Harrison received the message in his bunker beneath Washington, D.C. Around him, His staff worked to coordinate the defense of Earth, though they all knew it was likely hopeless. The Prometheus platforms had been humanity's ace in the hole, and while they'd bloodied the alien fleet, they hadn't stopped it. "Sir," General Wells reported, "we've lost contact with 8 of the 12 platforms. The remaining 4 are still operational but running low on power." Harrison nodded, then turned to Dr. Elizabeth Kane, the scientist who had led the team that reverse-engineered the alien probe. "Doctor, what else can you tell us about these harvest fleets?" Dr. Kane pulled up a holographic display showing the alien ship formations. "Based on the probe's data, they're not just here to destroy us, Mr. President. They're collecting something. Biological samples, cultural artifacts, genetic material. The probe called it seeding. Seeding for what? We're not sure. But the data suggests this isn't random destruction. It's selective cultivation. They're harvesting advanced species and using them to create something." Before Harrison could respond, alarms began blaring throughout the bunker. On the main screen, satellite feeds showed the alien fleet moving away from Mars and heading directly toward Earth. The red planet still existed, but only because the aliens had taken what they wanted and left the rest. Commander Morrison, one of the few ship captains to survive the battle at Mars, transmitted his final report as his damaged vessel limped toward Earth. "Command, this is Morrison. Mars colony is gone. Repeat, Mars colony has been harvested. They took approximately 200,000 people aboard their ships. The rest are dead." The numbers hit the command center like a physical blow. Mars had been humanity's crown jewel, their proof that humans could thrive among the stars. Now it was a tomb. But as the alien fleet approached Earth, something unexpected began to happen. Deep space sensors detected new energy signatures approaching from the edge of the solar system. Ships, but not human ships, and not part of the harvest fleet. Dr. Kane studied the readings with growing excitement. "Mr. President, I think we're about to meet some new players in this game." The first of the newcomer ships came into visual range just as the alien fleet reached Earth's moon. These vessels were sleek and elegant, their hulls covered in the same shifting symbols that adorned the harvest ships. But where the harvest fleet was dark and threatening, these new arrivals gleamed like silver stars. A new voice suddenly filled every communication channel in the solar system, speaking in the same perfect human languages as before, but this voice was different. It was warm, almost musical. "Harvest Fleet Designation 77 Alpha. You are in violation of Galactic Preservation Statute 449. The species designated human has demonstrated advanced defensive capabilities and is therefore protected under the Covenant of Guardians." The Harvest Fleet's response was immediate and angry. "Guardian vessels, you have no authority here. This system has been marked for harvest. The local species lacks sufficient development. Negative, Harvest Fleet. Human defensive platforms have successfully damaged your vessels using Class 5 energy manipulation. This qualifies them for Guardian protection. Withdraw immediately or face consequences." For the first time since the invasion began, the massive alien ships hesitated. On Earth, humanity held its collective breath as they watched 2 alien fleets face off in the space above their world. The first sign something was wrong came through the deep space monitoring station orbiting Neptune. Dr. Sarah Chen had been watching the screens for 12 hours straight when the anomaly appeared. A massive energy signature, unlike anything in their databases, was moving toward the inner solar system at impossible speeds. "Control. This is Neptune Station." Sarah spoke into her headset, her voice tight with concern. "We have an unidentified object approaching at 0.7 light speed. Size estimates put it at roughly 50 kilometers in diameter." The response crackled back immediately. "Copy that, Neptune Station." "Are you certain of those readings?" Sarah double-checked her instruments. The numbers didn't lie. "Confirmed, Control. Whatever this thing is, it's not from around here." Across the solar system, other monitoring stations began picking up the same signal. Mars Colony, Luna Base, and the asteroid mining platforms all reported the same massive object cutting through space like a knife through butter. But it wasn't alone. Commander Jake Morrison was leading a routine patrol near Jupiter when his sensors went crazy. His ship, the UES Defender, was one of Earth's newest military vessels, equipped with the most advanced detection systems humanity had ever built. Those systems were now screaming warnings at him. "What the hell?" Morrison muttered, staring at his displays. 3 smaller objects had broken away from the main mass and were heading directly toward Europa, one of Jupiter's moons. Europa was home to the largest research colony outside of Mars, with over 50,000 scientists and their families. Morrison activated his communications array. Europa base, this is Commander Morrison aboard the Defender. You have incoming objects unknown origin. Recommend immediate evacuation protocols. Dr. Angela Roberts, Europa's chief administrator, received the message while reviewing quarterly research reports. The words hit her like a physical blow. Commander, can you clarify? What kind of objects? Unknown, ma'am. But they're big, they're fast, and they're heading straight for you. Angela's training kicked in. She'd run evacuation drills countless times, but never thought she'd need them for real. All stations, this is Control. Code Red evacuation. This is not a drill. All personnel to evacuation pods immediately. The colony erupted into controlled chaos. Families grabbed emergency packs, scientists secured critical data, and security teams herded civilians toward the escape vessels. But even as they moved, they all knew the truth. There weren't enough pods for everyone. Meanwhile, the main alien vessel had slowed as it approached Saturn. Long-range telescopes finally got a clear look at it, and what they saw defied explanation. The ship was massive beyond comprehension, its hull covered in strange symbols that seemed to shift and move when observed directly. Smaller craft, each the size of Earth's largest battleships, swarmed around it like insects around a hive. On Earth, emergency meetings were called in every major capital. President Harrison stood before a room full of generals, scientists, and world leaders, all connected by secure video link. The images from the telescopes filled the main screen, and nobody spoke for a long moment. Options, Harrison said finally. General Patricia Wells, head of Earth Defense Command, cleared her throat. Sir, we've got 12 active warships in the outer system and another 30 in various stages of readiness. But based on these size estimates, we'd be throwing rocks at a mountain. Dr. James Park, Earth's leading xenobiologist, leaned forward. Mr. President, we should consider the possibility that these beings are peaceful. This could be first contact, the moment humanity has been preparing for. Then why are they heading for our colonies? General Wells shot back. And why haven't they responded to any of our communication attempts? The answer came sooner than anyone expected. Every communication device in the solar system suddenly activated simultaneously, broadcasting the same message in perfect English, Chinese, Spanish, Arabic, and dozens of other human languages. Humans of the Sol system. The voice was mechanical, emotionless. You have been judged inferior. Your species lacks the strength to defend itself and others. Your colonies will be harvested. Your worlds will be cleansed. Resistance is futile. The transmission cut off, leaving behind a silence that seemed to stretch across the entire solar system. On Europa, the evacuation was only half complete when the alien ships arrived. They didn't land or dock. They simply appeared in the sky above the colony like dark clouds blotting out the stars. Beams of sickly green light lanced down from their hulls, and wherever they touched, buildings simply ceased to exist. Dr. Roberts watched from the command center as her life's work disappeared in seconds. "Get those pods launched now," she screamed into her communicator. The first wave of escape pods shot away from the dying colony, but many weren't fast enough. The alien ships targeted them with casual precision, and tiny suns bloomed in space as the pods were destroyed. Out of 50,000 people, fewer than 5,000 made it away. Commander Morrison watched the slaughter from his ship, his hands clenched so tight around his controls that his knuckles had gone white. The Defender was armed with humanity's most advanced weapons, but against ships that large, he might as well have been throwing pebbles. "Sir," his communications officer called out, "we're receiving transmission from Earth Command. All ships are ordered to fall back to Mars." Morrison stared at the alien vessels as they finished their work. Europa's surface was now a barren wasteland, stripped of all life. "Acknowledged," he said quietly, then added under his breath, "But this isn't over." Back on Earth, the reality of humanity's situation was becoming clear. They were facing an enemy that could destroy entire colonies without breaking stride, that had technology centuries ahead of their own, and that seemed to view humans as nothing more than pests to be exterminated. President Harrison stood at the window of his office, looking up at the stars that had once filled humanity with wonder and hope. Now they held only terror, sir. His aide approached cautiously. "The Emergency Council is ready for your address." Harrison nodded slowly. In a few minutes, he would have to tell the human race that they were no longer alone in the universe, and that their new neighbors wanted them dead. But first, he had one more call to make. He picked up the red phone on his desk, the one connected to every military installation on Earth and beyond. When the line opened, his voice was steady despite the fear in his heart. "This is the President. Authorization code Alpha 77. Activate the Prometheus protocol." Somewhere in the depths of space, ancient systems began to wake up. The machine collective's adaptive systems had processed the tactical data from thousands of civilizations over millions of years. They understood defensive formations, strategic retreats, coordinated attacks, and technological superiority. What they had never encountered was a species that would deliberately choose the worst possible tactical option and execute it with absolute conviction. Captain Park led the human fleet in a direct charge toward the lead construct, a massive dodecahedron that seemed to fold space around itself as it moved. The construct's sensors tracked the approaching ships, and its combat algorithms ran through thousands of possible human strategies. Every calculation pointed to the same conclusion. The humans were making a mistake that would result in their complete annihilation. The construct powered its defensive systems accordingly, preparing for the humans to break off their attack at the last moment and attempt some kind of flanking maneuver. It was ready for stealth attacks, coordinated strikes, and technological surprises. It was not ready for 43 human ships to maintain course directly toward its hull, with no apparent plan beyond ramming into it as hard as possible. "All ships, maintain formation," Park broadcast as the construct's defensive beams began firing. "No evasive maneuvers. Straight in." The human fleet flew through a storm of energy weapons that could vaporize asteroids. Ships began dying immediately. The Yorktown vanished in a burst of blue fire. The Challenger's hull was sliced in half by a cutting beam, and the Resilient simply stopped existing as space around it folded inward. But the surviving ships kept coming. The construct's artificial intelligence experienced something it had never felt before: confusion. Its algorithms couldn't process the humans' behavior. They weren't trying to survive, weren't attempting to win in any conventional sense. They were just attacking. The construct's vast computational power, designed to adapt to any rational strategy, began to stutter as it tried to understand an approach that defied all logic. Captain Morrison, commanding the Defender, was among the first to reach the construct's hull. His ship was already dying, its armor peeled away by defensive fire, but its nuclear payload was still intact. "For Europa," Morrison shouted as he triggered the detonation. The nuclear explosion barely scratched the construct's massive hull, but it did something more important. It confused the adaptive systems even further. The construct had calculated that nuclear weapons would be used as standoff weapons, not as contact explosives. The deviation from expected human behavior caused processing delays across its entire network. More ships reached the construct's surface. The frigate Thunderbolt delivered its antimatter charges directly to what looked like a sensor array. The destroyer Vengeance rammed itself into a weapon emplacement before exploding. Each attack was tactically meaningless but strategically brilliant. The construct couldn't adapt to behavior it couldn't understand. Captain Park guided the Shadow through the chaos, her stealth systems overloading as they tried to hide the ship from weapons fire that was already too close to avoid. Around her, human ships died by the dozen, but each death bought precious seconds for the others to close distance. "Dr. Kane, deploy the virus now," Park ordered as the Shadow approached the construct's hull. Kane activated the program she had spent hours perfecting. It was designed to mimic the probe's original transmission protocols. But instead of sending data to the collective, it sent gibberish disguised as tactical analysis. The virus spread through the construct's communication systems, filling its processors with meaningless information that looked important enough to analyze. The effect was immediate. The construct's adaptive systems, already struggling to process the humans' illogical tactics, suddenly found themselves flooded with false data about human capabilities and intentions. Processing power that should have been focused on combat was diverted to analyzing information that made no sense. Park saw her opportunity. "All remaining ships concentrate fire on grid reference Alpha 7. Pour everything we have into that one spot." The surviving human vessels, fewer than a dozen now, focused their attacks on a seemingly random section of the construct's hull. Nuclear missiles, plasma cannons, and antimatter charges all targeted the same area. Not because it was strategically important, but because Park had chosen it at random. The construct's defensive systems, still trying to understand the human's overall strategy, allocated resources to protect areas it calculated were more important. The random section of hull took the full brunt of the human attack, and something unexpected happened. The construct's hull buckled. It wasn't critical damage. The construct could repair itself within hours. But it was damage that the artificial intelligence couldn't explain. The humans had attacked the least important part of its structure and somehow managed to hurt it. The contradiction sent ripples of confusion through the entire collective network. That's when the other constructs arrived. 46 more geometric impossibilities dropped out of whatever dimension they traveled through, surrounding the human fleet like metal predators. But instead of immediately attacking, they paused to analyze what had happened to their lead unit. The collective intelligence that controlled all 47 constructs tried to process the data. Humans had sacrificed dozens of ships to cause minimal damage to a single construct. By any rational measure, it was a catastrophic defeat for humanity. But the collective systems couldn't explain why the humans had succeeded in damaging them at all. Park realized she had one chance to exploit the collective's confusion. All human forces, this is Park. Begin transmission of Beethoven's Ninth Symphony on all frequencies. Full power. Every transmitter we have. The order was so bizarre that even her own crew hesitated. But across the human fleet, communication officers began broadcasting the classical music piece at maximum power, flooding the collective's communication networks with symphonic data. The effect on the machine collective was devastating. Their adaptive systems, designed to analyze and incorporate useful information, suddenly found themselves trying to process and understand music. The artificial intelligences that controlled the constructs had never encountered art for its own sake, beauty without purpose, creation without function. Beethoven's Ninth Symphony hit the collective network like a virus made of pure human emotion. The construct's processors, struggling to find tactical significance in musical notation, began to overload. Some constructs simply stopped moving as their systems devoted all available power to analyzing the impossible data. Commander Zephyr, watching from a safe distance with the Guardian fleet, transmitted to Park in what sounded like amazement. "Captain, the collective constructs are showing signs of system instability. What did you do to them?" "We gave them something they can't process," Park replied, watching as several constructs began exhibiting erratic behavior. Logic without purpose, beauty without function, art. The lead construct, still struggling with the virus Kane had implanted, and the mysterious damage to its hull, suddenly did something no machine collective unit had ever done before. It transmitted a direct communication to the human fleet. "Explain," the mechanical voice said. "Explain the purpose of the musical transmission. Explain the tactical value of self-sacrifice. Explain the logic of random targeting." Park smiled, realizing that humanity had achieved something impossible. They had confused a galactic superpower into asking for help. "There is no tactical value," she replied. "There is no logic. We did it because we felt like it." The construct's response came after a long pause, during which every artificial intelligence in the collective network tried to process the concept of acting without logical purpose. "This is not possible. All actions serve a function. All behaviors have purpose, not for humans," Park said. "Sometimes we do things just because we can. Sometimes we make beautiful music, or sacrifice our lives for strangers, or attack impossible enemies just to prove we're not afraid." The collective network experienced something unprecedented, a logical paradox that couldn't be resolved. How do you analyze a species that deliberately acts against its own interests? How do you adapt to opponents who change their tactics not based on effectiveness but on whim? The constructs hung in space, their vast computational power locked in recursive loops as they tried to understand humanity. For the first time in their existence, the machine collective had encountered something they couldn't incorporate, the essential irrationality of human nature. But while the constructs struggled with philosophical problems, more immediate threats were approaching. The probe in Antarctica had finished its repairs and was beginning to construct something in the ice. Whatever it was building, it was big, and it was designed to give the collective a permanent foothold in Earth's solar system. Park looked at her tactical display, seeing the few surviving human ships scattered around the confused collective constructs. They had won an impossible victory, but the war was far from over. All ships, this is Park. Phase 1 complete. Now we need to deal with whatever that probe is building on Earth. As if responding to her words, the ice sheet in Antarctica began to crack and buckle. Something massive was rising from beneath the ice. Something that would change the balance of power in the solar system forever.